Hey Valley View, today I'm going to walk you through some of the features of the updated Forms interface. And while many of you still prefer the older look of Google Forms, I thought it would be nice to show you how things are laid out before you go off and start editing old forms or creating new ones. The first thing we're going to look at is creating our new form. Just like before, we have two ways to start a new form. You can start a new form by clicking on the New button in Google Drive. So what I'm going to do is log into my Google Drive account. This is our main Drive interface. I'm going to go ahead and click on this big red New button. And I notice I do not see Google Forms here, so I'm going to go down to More. And then I'm going to select Google Forms. So this is method one of getting into a new form or creating a new form. The second way that we can create a new form is to go directly to the Forms page. So I opened up a new tab, and then I'm going to go directly to forms.google.com, as you see up here in the URL bar, or the Omnibox. Push Enter, and it will take me to the Google Forms landing page where I'll see all of the forms that I have created. When I'm here, I can create a new form by clicking on the plus button in the lower right corner of the screen where it says now Create New Form in a Help bubble. So I'll go ahead and click on that. And then again, I am brought to a new form. Now that we have this form window open, I'm going to talk a little bit about the interface and then let's scratch that. The first thing we'll look at is the title of the form. You can change the title by clicking here in the upper left corner of the screen where it says Untitled Form, or you can also change the form title right where it seems more intuitive to do so, since it's directly above your questions in this area over here. So if you do it here, notice how you see help text that reminds you that you can add a form description if you want to beneath it. So if I title this form Form 1, it will also change the title of the form here as well. Note the title that appears in the top left corner will always be your main title for the form. This just gets autofilled if I enter it up here. Speaking of reminders, don't forget that all changes are always saved in Drive immediately. Every time you type and edit any aspect of the form, as long as you're connected to a network, it will save your progress. All right, so let's take a look at some of the options that we have available to us here. So if we move over to the upper right side of our page, we see icons for the color palette, a preview icon, a settings icon, this button to send our completed form, and then we see these three dots, and then if I hover over it, it should say more, but it's not showing up there. Form actions, that's what I like to call this series of three dots. Now, finally getting down to the form itself, we see the title, which we just talked about, its description for the form description, and the first question ready for us to begin. Clicking on different questions, titles, or sections, we used to know them as pages, it will highlight that section with a slight pop-out effect and or indicator along the side of the question, which is this light blue line over here on the left. It also expands the item if needed. So we have our first question down here called Untitled Question. In this case, it's a multiple choice type of question, and then that's going to be the default type. So I clicked on it. Notice that pop-out effect and the line that appears here, kind of showing this 3D effect, I guess. And then we see multiple choice as a default option. From here, in this drop-down menu bar, I can change the question. In this view alone, I can also add options as needed for this multiple choice question. I can duplicate the question by clicking on this icon over here. I can delete it, or I can make this question a required question so that people cannot submit the form unless they have responded to this particular question. Now, along the right side of my question, we have a few more options. We see these in this rectangle that's to the right of my question. The plus icon allows me to add a new question. Most likely, you're going to want to ask more than one question on your form. So this is how you go about adding a new question to it. By clicking on this plus, you can see I have my question 1, I clicked on it, and now I have question 2 over here. Each time I click on a question, that option floating rectangle will pop up next to it. I'm going to go ahead and delete this one so we can focus on this. We have the 2-letter T's over here. This allows us to add a title and a description. This is if you want to have a section on your form called multiple choice and then put a series of multiple choice questions underneath it, or short answer sections. It's kind of like how a teacher would separate and section off portions of a quiz that he or she would be giving to their classroom. This image down here for this icon with this mountains view is the Add Image button. We have an Add Video button, and then we have Add a New Section or a Page button. So images and videos can be embedded into your forms, which is a great feature of Google Forms, especially if you're creating assessments for your students and then later grading them with an add-on like Flubaroo. And then adding a section allows you to really make your form dynamic and add multiple pages for your form depending on the answers that people are going to give in response to your questions. So that's about it. It looks like that the interface is different. It looks more simple, but then overall it's still the same. We still have the same features that we had in the old version of Google Forms. So the changes were pretty drastic when I first took a look at it, but after sitting down and looking at what we have now and kind of figuring out where things were, all we really have is a fresh coat of paint on the same Google Forms we already know. If you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to us in Instructional Tech directly or your local building technology support staff. Thanks.